that's a good deed that you're doing that shows you have love for God. But not that if you did not come, you do not love, but if it was Monday morning and boss man said you need to be here, regardless of the condition, where would you be? But since there's no immediate man discipline applied for not coming to church, then we'll base it upon how we feel. Not saying that you should not be cautious or you should not be considerate of the conditions outside. But if you were sick and you had to get to the hospital, would you stay at home because it was snowing? Would you stay at home because it was cold? But you would find a way to get to the hospital. And we've stated that this here is a hospital. This is where we come to get our prescriptions filled and our diagnosis met. So just because this is not man's hospital, why would you stay at home in the warmth of your own comfort, of your own residence? But we have to sacrifice. We have to be willing to go forth an extra mile. For when you left home this morning, even though there's black ice, there's white ice, there's conditions that you cannot control, that just means when you get behind the wheel, you should have prayer on your lips and prayer in your heart, saying, Lord, I'm journeying to the house of worship this morning, and if it be your will, let me arrive to that destination in order and in peace. But it takes a test of faith. You have to prove what you say. Some of us said, as a New Year's resolution, I promise, Lord, if you let me see 24, I'll be at church every Sunday and I'll be on time. Well, that's according to your will, because if, as Tukey said, if the storm was raging when you had to come to church, some of us would turn and go back. But you made a promise that you were going to be here every Sunday. But since God is a loving God, he forgives us for the lies that we tell. But he is not a man, and he will not lie. So if God says it, it shall be done. That's why I like Isaiah, the ending part. I have purposed it. So there's a reason for everything that God does. But you have to be a believer in God in order to believe in his purpose. We sit here and say, well, some things happen by faith, by God's faith, by God's purpose, by God's will. Now I'm going to bring it home to you, and I'm about done. I told you we didn't have a whole lot for you this morning, but if you look at our overseer, if I look at my father here on this earth, my daddy, his condition is not favorable to him or to the church. But because it's God's will that he be in this condition, we have to believe in God and know that it is working for our good. But if you do not believe in God and believe in his will and purpose, then you'll say, well, what's wrong with Pastor? Why is he coming under what he's under? But I believe in God. I believe in his will. Because if it had not been for his condition, some of us would not have stood up in areas. And I'll just keep it right here. A year today, this time last year, is when he walked to the side. And ever since that Sunday, I've been standing here. But it never would have happened if God had not did what he did for him, that I may stand up. And because I had already been called to preach, I chose to follow God. And since I said, Lord, whatever it is that you would have me to do, I had to prove it. As long as he was standing here, I could sit in the shadows. I could sit to the side and talk a good talk. But because God is faithful, God is covenant, he put him in a situation where he became weak in his flesh. And instead of trying to prove how strong he is and how strong the God in him is, he has helpers. And since I'd already did what I did for Uncle Sam, the same thing I did for Uncle Sam, I did for God. I volunteered. I was not drafted, but I volunteered. I chose to take up this cross. And because God is faithful, he promised that he would never leave me nor forsake me. I'm able to stand here a year strong now, still get nervous, still get a little weak sometimes, but because God made a promise, I'm confident that he ain't gonna leave me here without something. So if we would just turn our attention from our own desires, our own lusts, then focus on God, then what God has promised to us, we'll be recipients of. We'll be recipients of. Be some struggles. For God works in all things. Now, how can something bad God be in? Well, if you say he in you, that's as far as I need to go. Because all of us have sinned and come short. So if God is in us, then that means God is in something that has been doing bad things. Oh, I'm not saying you're the Antichrist, but none of us are perfect. So God is in us. God created us. So all we have to do is deny ourselves. If I could deny this flesh and let my mind stay focused on God's will, then what I'm striving for may not please this flesh, but my spirit man will be anchored in the Lord, and God will be saying, servant, well done. And then I will increase in my relationship. I will go stronger in my walk with Christ. Because once I believe in what he is saying and what he is doing, that means I become a participant. I partake of what is God's purpose. Now, what do you mean? That means that I'm seeking God to find out what's my purpose so that I can take my purpose and anchor to this. Because I'm at Progressive for a reason. I'm here for a purpose. But if I don't know what that purpose is, I'm just drifting. I heard someone say that darkness is not of God. I said all things are God. But God created the light and said that it is good. Before there was light, there was darkness. But since God wanted to make good, he made light so that we can know the difference between what we can't see and what we can see. And once you come into the light and can see what God is doing, then you need to start to follow that light. If you were walking and it was total darkness, you'd probably be a little nervous, a little scared, a little uncomfortable. But if on your journey you've seen a light ahead that would motivate you to seek out that light. God is a light that shineth. So it's not that we don't see him, because the light is so bright you can't help but see it. But because we don't want to deny this carnal body, because we want to operate in our own understanding, we ignore the light and continue to walk in darkness. But when you make up in your mind that I'm going to serve God's purpose, I want to do God's will, then you can start to strive towards that light. The light will shine and draw you closer to him. But have you ever been walking towards the light and it seemed like the more you walk, the farther it get? Now I've been walking 2-3 miles and I seem like I ain't no more closer to that light. But I still see it shine, and I still see that it's obtainable, that I can reach it, that if I just keep on striving, I'm going to get to that light. That's the way we got to do. We got to stay determined. It's not how fast you get to the light, but those who endure till they get to the light is what God is seeking out. God is endeavoring for us to keep on keeping on until we reach the light. But how long do I got to walk? Well, don't you know that the more you walk, the stronger you get? If you walk from here to Little Rock, oh, you may be tired when you get there. But if you've accomplished a feat that you have never done before, you made it to Little Rock. But then when you get to Little Rock, you say, well, I'm just a block away from that light. And when you think you're about to reach that light is pushed back further. God is saying, I'm still got work for you. You've made it to this point. You've made it here, but I got more for you. But I want you to take everything that you've gained to this point and keep applying it as you go further. And if you keep on applying it, then you'll see that everything that works for God's good is working for your good. Doesn't mean it's going to feel good, but it's working for your good. When that person comes up to you and cusses you to your face, all that you've learned on the journey, now it does not vex you the way it did, but it could have done, because I'm striving for the light, and I know if I keep on reaching for the light, your cuss words are just that. They are words that you have tried to harm me with. But because the light in me shineth, and it's of God, your words, as Pastor demonstrated the other day in Bible class, I can deflect those words. You saying them, but they ain't hitting me. I hear them, but they ain't affecting me. And that's what we got to learn to do, not let everything affect us. You have ears to hear, so you're going to hear what's said. But it should not consume you to the fact that you're thrown off track. Yes, sir. But when we're trying to please our own agenda, I'm Colonel. I'm from the streets. You cuss me, I can cuss you just as good. But I've learned this, and I've seen this. The ones that do all the cussing are the biggest punks. Once you get past the cussing, now they just like that monkey on Planet of the Apes. They bow down because they barked, didn't have no bite behind it. And we as saints got to understand, people are going to bark. They barked at Jesus. But you got to keep on to get past the bark so that you can say some words that God has given you that'll penetrate the heart. It's a promise, church. And if you want to find out it's a promise, put it to the test. Try it out and see. And if you're a true believer, if you're seeking the will of God, you'll find out that that promise will manifest. There's a song that says, God said it, I believe it. But in order for you as an individual to believe it, you got to apply it and test it out for yourself. You can't just go off what the preachers say. You just can't go off the next person's testimony. But until you experience God for yourself, it's hearsay. And we know hearsay can go either way. It depends on how convincing the storyteller is, what we're going to believe. But when you prove something, when you tried it for yourself, and you've experienced it, now you can stand up in it and say, I know for myself, God did this for me. I don't know what he done for you, but he did it for me. And when you say he's done it for you, then that means that God has fulfilled the promise. But we want to sit here and, Lord, I need a healing. And that's what we expect, and then you should expect it. But when you don't get the healing that your flesh is looking for, doesn't mean God failed you. Because it says all things work together for the good. Not your good. Not Corey's good. Not Sylvester's good. But for every. Y'all, I mean, when you look at all, what is all? Is it just what's here progressive? You know, I believe in I ain't said it in a while, but I believe in the Pledge of Allegiance. It says all nations under God. So that means every denomination, every ethnicity, every creed, everything that God created is all. And since he created everything, that means all. You can't get no more than all. But some of us are still seeking for more than all. We think we can get more than all. What I love about God, what I love about the promise, is there is a condition. How many of y'all think y'all can wait till Friday and just walk up to your job, to your supervisor or boss and say, I'm here to collect my check? I ain't been to work, ain't called in, ain't got no sick time, no PTO, no vacation. Just no call, no show. But you still expecting them to pay you. I don't think you're going to get no check. And you might get a letter saying that your services are no longer needed. Because there's a condition. In order to get paid, you got to labor. In order for God to fulfill his promise, you got to labor. There's things that you're going to have to do in order to receive God's promise. And it ain't just saying it. It takes deed. You know, if it was this easy, I'd say, I'm going to win the lottery. Lord, I want you to bless me to win the lottery. And if it was that easy, all of us be millionaires. But when none of us be here to hear this sermon. We done got that money, and we gone. And you know what our excuse for not being here would be? God done blessed me with this money, and he want me to enjoy it. So I'm out on the French Riviera, and I'm out touring and driving and seeing sights that the poor me wouldn't see. But since I asked God and he gave it to me, now, Lord, I don't need progressive, and to be honest, to my understanding, I really don't need you because I can buy anything that my heart desires. But we don't control God's power. Yes. We don't control God's will. And we sure don't have no control over God's wrath. I got millions in the bank, but I'm laid up in bed. Can't do nothing, can't count it, can't go look at it, can't smell it, can't even spend it because I'm bedridden. And what good would it be for me to buy anything and not be able to use it? But God has something that you can use, regardless of your condition, your physical condition. And that's a 4-letter word that's called love. And you can use love in any state that you're in. And God is wanting us to be believers that regardless of your condition, my love is faithful. My love is promised to you. But there's a condition that you're going to have to apply to yourself in order to be a full recipient of my love. Are you still going to experience God's love regardless of what you do? But if you want to be a full recipient, if you want God's covenant promise that has nothing to do with this carnal body, that has kingdom existence, that's going to help you when he comes back again and calls those out of the grave to join him in the sky. If you want that promise, there's a condition. And that condition cannot be fulfilled in this carnal body. This flesh cannot please God to the point that he's satisfied with what you do. But we're trying our best to prove that a lie. But if we would take that negative energy and trying to prove the impossible and just take a dose of that to prove what God has said, how much better would we be? One day, it's going to soak in. But I hope it don't have to be that day that you're on the bed of affliction, when now you ain't got nothing else to do but turn to God. But while you're able, while you can make a difference with the beings that you have in your body now, let God instruct you how you ought to go about. And then when you follow those instructions and are obedient to what he is saying to you, now all things begin to work together for the good of those who love God. Because again, if he had not put the pastor in the position that he's in, I wouldn't be here. But even as Sister Isabel testified, the family is now a tighter fist than what it was a year ago. The involvement with each other has intensified, has increased. The knowing of each other is greater. So because of his condition, it's working for the good of the family. And because it's working for the good of the family, I myself have been able to minister to other people that even though it doesn't look good, it's working for our good. And God is always going to choose an individual to use for his purpose. And since he has chosen my father, our pastor, then we should, as a unit, pull together. We shouldn't want to be concerned to be nosy, but we should be concerned to know what we can do to help lighten his load. Not because he's the feeder, not because he's been here 30-some years pastoring, but because we have love for him. And if you love him, say you love God and not come to church. How can you love me, but you don't come where I am? You know, my parents live maybe 2-3 blocks away from me. If I had a strong enough BB gun, I could bust their front window from my house. There are days I don't see my mother nor my father in the physical. But there'll be times I'll be laying in my bed or I'll be in my room and Spirit will say, go to the window. And I go to the window and I take these 2 fingers and part my blinds and I see that white truck riding by. And when I see the truck pass by, I say he at least has to be in decent condition. Because when he was not feeling well, he did not do that. But when I see the truck pass by, I don't call him. I don't run outside. I said, Lord, thank you. Thank you for showing me that he's still being who he is. And then when he put it heavy enough on me, I know how to get in the ride and go around the corner. And I'm through with the message. But this is how God works. There was a time I could walk through his door. Y'all know he swear he half ninja and he got all these skills. Well, that was the old VanBuren. That was that 60 and below. Now that he on that 70 plus, you can walk up on him, he don't even know it. But there was a time I would do that, and I see him with his head bowed down. It would discourage me. But y'all know what I see now when his head is down? I said, oh, look at him. He's talking to the Lord. He's having a conversation. And I heard him say something over there. I don't know what he said, but, you know, I can walk all through that house. He never raised his head. Sometimes mama can even be there. I came in the house. They come in the kitchen because I'm in there prowling, and they jump when they come in. But we didn't know you was in here. I know it. I didn't want to disturb y'all because I want y'all to still do y'all thing. But one day, I was getting ready to leave. He never did lift his head up. The westerns were still on. Mama was gone. And I came in to discuss something. But I seen him in his comfort zone. And I said, well, Lord, I guess you talking to him right now, so I'm not going to interrupt. But it said, just go to the kitchen. They have a door that, what is called a peekaboo door, a hideaway door, something that just slides. And if you stand on the bathroom side of that door, it gets a little chilly. But when you come on this side, it's warm. And the Spirit said, stand on the cold side. I said, no, I don't know about this one. It wasn't cold like outside, but it wasn't comfortable like inside. But I sit there, and the Spirit began to speak to me. He said, now, he's in there, and he's idle. You came to disturb him being idle. And I know that's your father. But I want you to not run to him every time there's something in you that you don't understand. I was here before he was here. So don't interrupt his idle time. Wait until I send you to him. And then when I send you, he'll already have an understanding of what you come for. And he can tell you, I don't come to him nowhere near as much as I used to. Not because the information is not valuable, but I have to seek out what God is wanting me to say. And then when God says, go to your instructor, go to him so he can break it down a little further for you. And then when he tells me his interpretation, what he tells me is going to be the same thing he tells y'all. Now, again, it's working for the good. Not just of me, not just for him, but for God's people. And I said, Lord, I never looked at it that way, because I look at him as the pastor, so I should run to him. He's my father. I got access to him, so I shouldn't have to struggle with anything that I don't understand because I have access to him. But God said, you got that same access to me. And he said, if you would just practice accessing me the way you try and access your earthly father, your spiritual father, you'll see that I will not lead you astray. and you would not leave me void. And there are times that I just want to just speak just because of conversation. But now that I have an ear to the heavens, there's a peace about our peace. Sometimes we go eat, and there's a peace. But during that time of peace, I'm observing all things. Everything, you say ain't God. But all things are God. And some of y'all can bear witness to this. We can be talking about sports. The next thing you know, he'll say, that's the way it is with the Lord. And for a minute there, I'd be like, brother, we talking about Michael Vick and all of the moves he done made. But then when I open up my spiritual mind, I start to see that God says, I can be just like Patrick Mahomes. It seems like they got me down, but I just flick my wrist and the ball goes to the next man and he runs for a touchdown. But because it did not look good, it looked like you had me bound, but I'm powerful. I'm a magician. And the works that I do, no man can explain. So, church, I say in my closing, if you want the promise, then you got to be willing to apply the conditions that it takes to get the promise. So that means if you have to go through the storm, go to the storm knowing that God is in the storm with you. And if the storm gets turbulent and starts to look uncomfortable and feel uncomfortable and you can't find a way out. But if you believe, trust and believe, I'm not saying the storm gonna go away, but when you get to the other side, whether the storm is still there or not, you can say, God, that I see you honored your word. You brought me through. And the storm can still be raging. The sickness can still be in the body. The discomfort is still there. But the promise is that he never left you. And as Paul says, his grace is sufficient. Doesn't mean he's going to remove the condition. But if he sees you through it, if he lets you have a peace in the midst of the storm, that's his promise. The doors of the church are open. There may be somebody that's seeking the promise. You may not know how to get to the promise. You may not know how to obtain the promise. But we serve a God who speaks to us on our understanding. We still got some water in the tub. We ain't drained it out yet. Somebody may want to get a dip at the end. I still got them wet clothes outside.
Oh, gentle Savior, hear my humble cry. While on others thou art calling. I'm calling you, Savior, oh, Savior, hear my humble cry. While on others thou art calling, do not pass me by. I'm calling.